Hey everybody, this is Rory Francis and you're watching another episode of Igniting American Manufacturing. And today I have on a gentleman from the PT group and in the tech sector, Oliver Jay-Rayon. And I know that's the American way to pronounce it. Oliver, how would you say that if you were home in France?
So that would be Olivier Jay-Rayon. And funny story is that my name is not even a common French name. So I get different pronunciation in all over the countries I go in the world.
Okay, well, I'll try to get better with the pronunciation next time. My French accent is pretty poor. So, well, Oliver, welcome to the show. And I really enjoyed, for the folks out there, Oliver and I sat down and had a long lunch and talked about all things manufacturing and the EV ecosystem. And we talked for quite some time. And I think we can go a lot of directions. And I think we just wanted to pick one today. So I wanted to talk a little bit, Oliver. And going back to we said about lean and optimization and being competitive in this market. And this show's about igniting American manufacturing. How can the U.S. be competitive in that market? I do want to mention, before we start, I've had a great week. I really have. I was up in Atlanta, and I was at the British Consulate residency. And Tuesday I was at Georgia Tech and I moderated a panel, and the panel was sponsored by Envision EV race team, and they make a electric race car, and their Envision is owned by AESC, and there's always a connection in this industry. It's such a small industry. AESC and Envision make batteries in South Carolina, in Florence, and they drive across the highway due east to Greenville, and they go into the BMW plant in the car, and then you're working over there. So,
correct.
And that is indicative of where we're at right now in the Southeast. This is the battery belt. If you want to be in the EV sector in the United States, having a presence here, and that leads into next week we're having the first ever battery show South. So the battery show that's in Stuttgart every year and the one that's up in Detroit has seen fit to embrace the battery belt. So right here locally in this region, we're seeing things take off, and we're seeing a lot of plants. So Oliver, and I'm going to stay away from tariffs and geopolitics today because that's a whole series of shows, But going beyond that, or previous to that, we've been reshoring, and manufacturing was coming back, and the CHIPS Act, and it's been coming back for a while. But we all know that we're competing against predominantly Asia and the EU, but predominantly Asia, and we say that with China. Now, standing away from geopolitics, they have the upper hand. They've been building batteries longer than us, and they've gotten really good at it. How can we be competitive in this market? And you and I came up with, we need to be more efficient. And we started talking a little bit about lean. So that's what I want to get into. So the folks here that aren't tech nerds in manufacturing, can you kind of break down lean or your take on lean? What is lean?
All right. So without going too long into my own story with lean, which started now 6-7 years ago, so actually quite late, I would say, in my career. Lean has always been, to me, a way to do things direct and simple. Okay, and that means much beyond lean manufacturing or lean design and so on. So the way I use that and the way I see that is that in anything you do, you need to have very clear goals, and those goals needs to be communicated and understood by the whole organization. So in lean is the concept of hostt, which is the most commonly used. So to me, one more time, it's having clear goals, having clear strategy, being able to break that down to your whole team, to your whole organization, and making sure that what you do is always simple, useful, and direct is the way I see it.
Okay, all right. So lean is not an American construct. It actually came from Japan, I believe. Can you give us a little background on the origins of where lean came from? Who was the first implementers?
So the lean is actually, everybody knows it, coming from Toyota. So the Toyota production systems, and that's where it for the first time showed to the world how you could get, through the methodology, really great results, great product, great quality. And I wasn't there at the time, but at least in the 80s, it was a shock for the American market, where they saw, whose cars coming from Japan at the time with better quality, competitive, or even better cost. So that was studied at the time in terms of how whose companies in Japan have been so successful, and it came to this understanding that the way they were driving the operation, they were designing their product, they were running the manufacturing, was a specific way and set of rules and principles that was then coined lean by some gentlemen later on in the US, in North America, like Jim Womack and Mike Roffer and so on. So that's where it came from. And if you look at it from the historical perspective, it comes back actually to the Second World War and the rebuild of Japan after the Second World War. So with the gentleman, Mr. Deming, was very important in rebuilding, the Japanese industry. So it has grown and it has become famous in the 80s through Toyota, but it comes from a set of principles, both from Japan, both from the West, earlier in the 20th century.
Well, the Japanese in the 50s, starting in the 50s and the 60s, looked up to the United States as a manufacturing powerhouse, and the government,
Right.
Along with industry, set out to usurp or to gain some of that market. And one of the first places they did it was in Toyota, and this is one of the ways they did it by leaning their process and make themselves more efficient. They could compete in the American market, and they were very successful in taking a good share of that. When you're in a Toyota plant, it has a certain look to it. It's very consistent no matter what plant you go to, and it talks about. Tell me a little bit about can you speak to 5S a little bit?
So 5S, I won't remember the names or the terminology in Japanese, that's for sure. But 5S is a way you can organize your workplace where you make sure that everything is set, is sorted, is clean, and so that you know that by going to this workplace, you have everything you need in order to do the job. It's simple, one more time, it's useful, and there is nothing more to that. And the last aspect is to make this sustainable. So to 5S, it's a way you can make your work area serving the process you do and keeping it that way. So that's the way I see that.
I've been in factories that employed 5S, and basically, they standardize everything, and that's why you go from one plant to the next, everything looks very similar. They sort through what they're doing and remove what they don't, remove all the waste, and then they standardize. What you need is where it's supposed to be. It's there at all times, so there's less steps. It's down to counting steps, to get to your material and putting things where they needed to be and things along those lines. So a great tool.
Right.
And that, that went down to the boots on the ground, and it was about, part of that was, yes, we want our equipment where we need to be, and yes, we want to standardize, and yes, we want to sort and do all those, and there's a benefit, but the added benefit, and I think, I realized this organically, it created a lean and 5S culture. So when we talk about lean, how important is culture in lean or any organization?
I believe that's the number one thing you need in order to thrive and to take advantage of the benefit of lean. So culture, let me try to define culture with simple words, at least my word for that. Culture is how you solve your daily problem every day. So you may have the Japanese culture, the French culture, the American culture. It's all about how we as a group, as a society of people, how do we solve our daily problems? So if you're able in your company, in your organization to attack and to make sure that the culture is the right one, that's how you make sure really be effective, can be owned by the people you work with, and can be sustainable over time. So to your question, culture is first the most important part you need in order to have lean part of your organization and to take advantage of the result. And it's also the hardest to get at. It's the hardest to change. It's the hardest to sustain. It's the hardest part of an organization to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do and for the long term.
Okay. So lean. Expand a little bit about lean and the term optimization a little bit for me.
All right. So lean and optimization, coming back to what I said at the beginning. So lean being about, being, in my own words, the simplest way to solve an issue and the simplest way to create value in something you do. When you talk about optimization, lean is very powerful because it gives you the first definition of the value you're trying to create. Okay, so let's say you have a process where you're installing a machine. Let's put it that way. You're installing a machine means probably you want to connect to the power first. You want to connect to the IT system. You want to connect, a few other utilities. Lean tells you, or lean makes you think and makes you define what is the value of what you're trying to achieve. And as simple as it is, and as simple it is to explain this, it's very common that the value that you need when you install the machine, which is having your machine, for example, installed at the right place, at the right time, with the proper, connections, this is something that gets lost a lot. So coming to optimization, lean makes you think about what is the value you're trying to achieve in your process. And only then you can think about optimization. Only then you can think about more efficient ways to get to this value, to create this value, to automate in order to create this value, your process. So to me, lean is the first step you need to do in order to optimize any kind of process, if that makes sense.
So I'm going to throw a couple of questions all at once. I'm just going to spell them out. We can go through them each. So the 5 core principles for lean: define the value from your customer's perspective, map the value stream, create continuous flow, and establish a pull-based systems. That's a one that needs a little explaining. Here's one's fairly evident: pursue perfection or continuous improvement. So let's start with defining how important is defining the value from the customer's perspective, and what tools do you at P3 use to do that?
Okay, so how important it is? It's one more time. It's the most important step you need, because when you do a process, when you invest resources, when you invest your time, your energy in a company, as a person, as a team, you want to achieve a certain goal. And having the value in front of you, well defined, is going to tell you what it is you need to achieve to be efficient, to be effective, and to have basically your process working and your team being successful, your project being successful, your company being successful. So that's extremely important to define it. And then you need to define it from the customer perspective. That means you need to understand that as a company with your customers or within an organization, you serve you serve your customers. So you need to understand from their point of view what is going to be useful for them to do their job, to create their own value, so that you can really help them. And that part is, one more time, is the first and it's the most important part. For what we use at P3, it's very simple. I'm sure you heard about VOC, voice of the customer. But I would say that in a nutshell, what we do is we speak to our customer. We put ourselves in our shoes. We interview them. We listen to them. And we try as best as we can to understand what brings value to them. It is the first part of what we do. Then, of course, with our experience of, for example, I was mentioning, connecting equipment. We know what it means to connect equipment. We've done it before. So we listen to our customers to understand the specifics of their situations, of their process, and what brings value to them, what is useful to them. And we combine it with our own experience of what we know in absolute makes sense. And I believe those two parts is what enable us to make the best of both worlds, which is to listen to your customer, to what they want, but also to know what makes sense and to fine-tune it to make something that is as useful as possible for your customer, for them to do their job, for them to create their own value, and for them to be happy with the service you give them and to feel helped.
No, in lean training and smart manufacturing training or writing a project execution plan, understanding what your customers' needs are and what their wants are and their have-to-haves, is critical for any success of a project. So super important. It's probably, no matter what theory, whether it's lean or smart manufacturing or whatever philosophy you take, that's one that holds true in all those. I mean, you have to understand that. So let's move on. Mapping the value stream. Tell me a little bit about, when you're lean, mapping the value stream. What are we saying? What are we actually saying there?
All right. So mapping the value stream, you want to use the value stream mapping tool, which is you start from so one more time. The first step is you create or you define the value in the eyes of your customer. From the value of the customer, from what you want to create, you define the different steps and that are going to bring you to this value, meaning you start from the end. And that's one of the key ideas from lean. You have the value, this is your goal, this is your North Star, this is what you want to achieve in time, in cost, and in quality, and in scope. And you create your value flow. So by doing this in manufacturing, which is for most of us where we use the value stream mapping the most, is we create and we show what are the different steps in order to get to this value, which is usually a product of good quality with the proper throughput for the process and the cost. And by doing that, you're able to show the different steps. You're able to show the step from the production. You're able to show the impact of internal logistics and how they influence that. You're able to show the information flow. And you're able to show basically how within your factory, in that case, you're able to create the value you want at the end. So you're able to show the different step where value is going to be created. And what you want to make sure, and that comes to the next principle, is that this value is flowing, that the way the value is created between all the different steps flows naturally. There is no obstacle to the flow. There is no waste, and so on. So the value stream map is, in my experience, I'm going to speak from my experience, and P3 it's a very powerful tool to show how the value is created, to have a transparent approach to what you do. A lot of people, a lot of projects, I'm sure you've been there, where you have the knowledge in the head of someone, in the head of someone else. By putting the value on the map, you create something which is objective, transparent, and that everybody can use to discuss or to improve certain topics. So that's about it. And it's a map like Google Map in a way. You show what you do and you're able to use this as a tool to collaborate with your different teams and so on to get to the best efficient way to create this value you want to achieve, which is defined in your first step.
Yeah. Good friend of mine, Professor Kirk Schroeder, when he talks about lean, is building with the end in mind.
Exactly.
Always have that end in mind. What's the final product I'm trying to get? Continuous flow. Create continuous flow. Thoughts there?
Oh, that's continuous flow. I'm going to give you an example because this time is going to be a bit different than manufacturing. Flow is the idea that, like in a river, the water can flow without obstacles, without slowing down, without creating heat, without inefficiencies, okay? And in lean, what you learn is that in order to be efficient with your operation, meaning to reduce your lead time, to reduce your operation costs, you have to follow the same thing. How your value is created, which you have defined one more time, you have your map, the two first steps. The flow is about making sure you have no obstacle in the way. And I'm going to give you an example, which is exactly correct. but that some people don't think about. It is, you open your factory. Okay, so you are in the factory, you are in a ramping up project. You have your equipment to install at a point in time, and you want to make sure that when you install your equipment, there is nothing on the way. There is no forklift on the way, the door are open, there is no other team, with another equipment on the way. And if you don't have this, or if you have some obstacle in the way, your work, your team, and the value creation of it is not going to flow. So that's exactly the same idea. You need to make sure that once you have identified how your value is created and what are the different steps to do so, that it's seamless in between those steps for the value to be created. So that's where the flow ideas come from. And I use a lot the analogy, with a river, with the water, because it's exactly the same. You want to make sure it flows, it creates value, it's efficient, you don't have, or you have as little waste as you can, and then you can go on to the next step.
Okay. Well, two more here, and I'm going to ask you to change the subject here. You didn't know it was going to be a test, Oliver, did you? I'm sorry. Establish a pull-based system. I think this is the one that people don't understand the most. Break that one down for us. A pull-based system.
A pull-based system means that, one more time, you have created your value, you have the map of the value, you have ensured that you have as least as it gets, in terms of obstacles along the way, so you can ensure the flow. The question becomes, how do you start? Where does it start? Which one of the step, in your process is going to be the first one to say, hey, I'm working today, I'm creating something, and I'm going to give it, to the next step. So the pull system tells you that you start from the end. So, for example, in the term of, one more time, taking the analogy, with the manufacturing plant, the pull system tells you that you should look at your demand. Okay, before you manufacture something, ideally, you make sure that you have demand from your customer outside the factory so that the factory has a product to create. And then when you take your map, which is from the beginning of the process to the end, the pull system tells you that you should take this demand and see the impact on it going upstream into the process. Okay? And once you have this, you make sure that every action that you have in your process, when people are working on something, creating value and so on, it is because the next process has requested something to be created, has sent information that there is a need of parts, has sent the request that there is a need of assembling some equipment. And that is a very important part into making sure that you can say demand driven, I think that's another name for that, but that's how you get your production system or your process at all to be efficient. If you do not do this, which I think is important also to mention, you are in a push system. So you say pull, the opposite being push. By being push or being in a push system, you have a lot of inefficiencies because when you create something, when you're in a process, you don't know if that actually matches what the next step needs, and then the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step, and so on. And the efficiencies mostly come from there. So pull is making sure that what you create is just what you need. Maybe in simple spot.
And the last one, this one shouldn't take long. It's fairly obvious. Pursue perfection through continuous improvement.
So as you said, this one is very simple. It's something which everybody understands, but very little people do and enforce, or at least drive it. Okay, so continuous improvement means first and foremost, which is important, you have a standard. So you cannot improve on something which is not defined. Okay, so you have your standard, as we said right now, you have your value defined, you have your mapping, you have your flow, you have your pool. You need this. You need a current, let's say you are in a situation, you have your operation, you need a current state, okay? And that's the one thing I've learned before you improve anything. Make sure you know where you stand, okay? Now, once you have this defined and you have a map and you know where you stand, so you can think about improving your process. So how you do it, there are plenty of ways to do it. My favorite way to summarize it is if you have a team, you need to use the brain of everyone in your team. So continuous improvement process for me, for P3, for our experience, is we use and we leverage all the people we have in the team, all the point of view. It can be the production, it can be the quality, it can be logistics, it can be the marketing, anyone. And we make sure that we have ideas on what to improve, which also can be reflected, in the KPIs. But in a nutshell, you need a standard, you need to know where you are, and you need relentlessly to, as a leader, as someone who is driving, who is running such project, you need to make sure that everyone regularly, frequently think about what can be improved, mention it, discuss the idea, and then together decide on what can be done to improve it. And once you improve it, once you implement it, you measure again. So you can link that to the PDCA, cycle, which is famous, but that's really it in a nutshell. Define your standard, as a team analyze what you can improve, make sure it's implemented, measure again. You have a new standard, and then beat on that. Drive it relentlessly, and make sure it's part of the culture.
Okay, so to summarize, we're defining our customers' needs. We're mapping the value stream.
Yep.
We're creating continuous flow. And we're looking at the end, and we're doing a pull-based system, and we're continuously improving. So if we do that, and we employ 5S, and we make standardize and get things flowing, can we employ these and improve ourselves? Does it move the ball forward? Does it help, take that in smart manufacturing? Does it help with us on a competitive level with Asia, or is that just the baseline? They're doing it, we need to do it just to keep equal? Can we actually improve and make better? How's this tool going to help us in the States, or this philosophy in the States, be competitive? Is it a necessity, or is it nice to have?
It's a necessity. So I was taking the opposite approach and saying, if we do not do this, what is going to happen is that we're going to bring our factories to our own home country here. We're going to be doing what was happening, or what it was, how it was running, in Asia and so on. But basically, we're going to be doing the same, creating value, creating jobs, and so on. But it's going to be very, very difficult to be competitive on the long term on the market, because we, in our wages in US, in the Western world, we have our wages, and this is not going to change. This is going to remain that way for a long time. So by doing lean, what we do, and really in the simplest word, is before we reshore, before we bring back operation, or we create new operation, we look at the best way this can be designed, this can be launched, and this can be run. And in my opinion, in our opinion, for P3, this is something which is absolutely essential to make sure that, together with new technologies, automation, robots, as we're talking, now in a few years, we have manufacturing back in the US more as a part, of our GDP, but which is efficiently designed, launched, planned for, and manufactured. And this is going to be a key part of making sure that we do not only rely on automation, on robots, to get and to gain a competitive edge on our competition overseas.
Okay. So P3, where's P3? Let's talk a little bit about P3, the group you're with, and I've heard some really good things, but I want to hear your words. Home base, and how big of an organization we're P3?
So we are a company, German origin. We are based in Stuttgart. Size of the company, I would say, still boutique consulting, so 1,500 people in the world. We're present in Asia, in Europe, in North America. And North America, I'm speaking about the US and Mexico. And what we do is, let me tell you in a nutshell. So we're a technology consulting company. That means that we help our clients realize their vision in helping them all things technology. So what I mean with that is everything we do goes around the technology. We help them evaluating new technologies. So in the terms of due diligence, for example, we help them design and set up their operation and supply chains. And we have them also in the field of digitalization. So these are the three core services and teams that we have in Internet. And that's how we have our clients. And one more thing I want to say is that in terms of environment, what I personally particularly appreciate is P3, we're very hands-on. That's usually what we hear from our customer. And to me, it goes beyond this. It's because we take the time, we are creators and implementers, that's what I want to say. We take the time to create, creative solutions, and our motto for that is business as usual, but also once we created, those innovative solutions to solve, our customers' issues, we are excellent at going hand-to-hand with our customer and making sure it is implemented, it's bringing the result it should and supposed to by theory, and it gives them, in the end, the value in hand that they're hoping to get to solve the problems.
All right. Well, Oliver, that was a difficult subject, and I threw some curveballs at you, and you were the right person to ask these questions. I know, and we didn't get into this. I know you're very passionate about what you do. I know you're passionate about fostering the lean culture and continuous improvement and doing this better. And I do agree with you. Lean is essential. Smart manufacturing is essential. We need to embrace all the nanoscent tools of technology out there to compete. And if we're going to compete against China, and that's basically what we're saying, we need to do them better. We need to do them better, and we need to start talking about STEM and training people and that continuous component. The strength, of America always has been we're innovators. So a lot of this technology we're developing is our technology. We've offshore, it's reshoring, to your point, we can reshore and bring back these factories, but one, we don't have the people to do it. We're not going to succeed. If we don't do it right, lean and pragmatic and optimize, we won't be able to compete. So we're not economically, it'll be a failure. We won't do it. If we don't embrace smart manufacturing, automation, robotics, and that relieves two things. It's part of lean. It's a digitalization of lean, and it also addresses some of our workforce deficiencies. Because if we trained everybody we could, we still don't have enough people. So, I'm going to close with this, and I just talked to someone about this yesterday. I know you and I have talked about it at length. Robots aren't here to take our jobs; they're creating jobs, and we don't have the people to fill the jobs we have. So we need all that technology. I want to have you back, Oliver, and talk about some of the tech that's going into your facilities, some of that automation, some of that digitalization, and the technical part, the actual, how PLC is changing and SCADA and getting the factory, all those components talk to each other, and that's smart manufacturing, like I said. And it's an iteration of lean. Oliver, you're a wealth of knowledge, and I thank you for coming on and talk to us. I look forward to having many more conversations with you, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Everybody, this is Rory Francis, and you just finished watching another episode of Igniting American Manufacturing. Ciao.
Thank you, Francis.